Maryland football ends a terrible season on a terrible note.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys go over to Inside Black and Gold for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Maryland football ends a really bad season on a really bad note against a top team in the country. When we played them, the number 4 team in the country, they'll probably go up a little bit. Now I guess it's going to be the Penn State gets to play in the Big Ten championship. Talk about a crazy weekend of college football. You had the Penn State Ohio State game, or the Ohio State Michigan game. That was absolutely crazy, a really crazy weekend of football with rivalry week. And of course, Maryland football played in its last game of the season because we're not bowl eligible, and we suffered a horrible loss to Penn State. And there's so many different things to talk about, and there's so many different things to address. But I just want to start off by saying this season was horrible. It was bad, and that performance against Penn State summed up what our team is right now. And it's a team that is not particularly well coached and not particularly talented. And when you get those two things that come together, when you don't have a team that's super talented, that's just more talented, like Penn State, they're very talented. They cannot be the best coach team, and they'll still be a top 15 team in the country. Not saying they don't get coached well, but I'm saying in terms of their talent, in terms of their personnel, they'll still be a top team in the country. Some teams are really well coached. They're not necessarily the best team in the country. They're not necessarily the most talented team in the country, but they're very well coached. But I think Maryland, what we saw against Penn State and what we've seen throughout this year is we had a combination of really bad coaching. I think Mike Locksley has done a really good job with this Maryland program, and I still believe we can go in the right direction and get things to where they need to be. But this year, I think everyone would agree it was a horrible coaching job. I think it's his worst coaching job, even though his first year was similar to this year in terms of record. You gave him the benefit of the doubt because it's like he still got to get his recruiting classes. He still's got to bring in people. But this year was his worst coaching job I've seen Coach Locksley do. One of the worst he's ever had, and the worst at Maryland. And for Maryland to lose 7-44 to Penn State is alarming, I would say. I know Penn State's a top 5 team in the country. I know they're really good, and I know they're really talented, and I know they got dudes almost everywhere on the field. But that's a team I don't think you should lose to 44-7. And Vegas agrees with me. The spread was 24 points to this game. So if Maryland lost by 20 points, I've been like, hey, we performed better than they thought we would in terms of what the math thought we would. Or if we lost by 25, I've been like, hey, that's about how much we were supposed to lose by, and we played how we were supposed to. But we got absolutely cracked in what? We lost by, I guess that's 37. Like that's a little bit much, even though we're on the road. And that brings me to the point that this year's team is not coached, and we also weren't that talented. I can't say that we had a talented team this year. We didn't. There's way too many holes. There's way too many problems. And you could argue next year won't get better necessarily. It's not like we have a bunch of sure, there's some good, talented young players, but it's not like we had a bunch of young guys that were really making an impact on the game, that it's like, oh, next year everyone's back. Like, it's not necessarily that case. We have a really talented recruiting class, but I just think that this loss against Penn State was really bad, especially how we started the game. We got kind of lucky to start. Penn State gave us a gift where their running back fumbled it. And MJ Morse delivered an absolute dime. And that's the other perspective. The quarterback thing is something I'm going to address a little bit later when I talk about the offensive line and everything. But MJ Morse looked bad. After that first play, after the fumble where he delivered an absolute rope to Caden Prather, like it was one of the better throws I've seen this year from a Maryland quarterback. His first throw of the game, it was a 25-yard dime and to Caden Prather. It was a really good throw to Caden Prather. But I can't judge MJ Morris. I can't really judge him, and I don't know if there's much more to talk about with MJ because I'm almost sure he's going to leave. To be completely honest, like I can talk about MJ Morris and what he did here, but he just never really got a chance. Didn't really get a chance. That's what it comes down to. We didn't set him up for success, and I think I thought Billy Edwards was probable to play for the whole week, and then I guess was still having issues. And so MJ Morris gets a chance to play against Penn State, but what's he going to do? There's not protection. Guys aren't going to be open. We can't run the ball. It's not going to look good. And I don't 3 picks is really bad. And sure, you could point out a lot of things and say you have to do this better, you do that better. There's a lot of things that he has to fix. But at the end of the day, it's like he was not set up for success with this football team. And I just thought we got outclassed completely. And my thing is, yes, Penn State's better than us. I just don't think we should be losing by the amount of points that we lost to by 37. Even Champ Long got a couple of throws and didn't do much with it. Got only 2 attempts. I honestly thought Roman Hemby and Nolan Ray, in terms of the averages, didn't necessarily run the ball actually that bad when you look at it. Nolan Ray, 9 carries for 51 yards. Roman Hemby, 13 carries for 64 yards. I wish we had a better game plan where maybe those two, we could control the clock a little bit more, get those two the ball more, because we were running the ball not horribly against a Penn State team that I thought it would honestly be it would be really hard to rush the ball, and I thought we were going to have to throw it, but it's kind of the opposite in this game. We couldn't throw the ball at all. We tried to get Ty Felton involved, couldn't really do it. Only 27 yards, and that was our leading receiver. 27 yards, Ty Felton. In a game where you lose 7-44, your leading receiver shouldn't have 27 yards because the game script should allow you should be throwing the ball a lot. You should be throwing the ball a lot. And so the fact that Ty Felton was our leading receiver at 27 yards after we're down by so many points, so we should be throwing the football, which is something Maryland football has had. Even though MJ Morse only ended up having 24 attempts, Penn State definitely kind of cooked the clock down a lot of the time. It just wasn't a good enough performance. The defense, I didn't think looked good either. I thought our defensive line just got pushed back. Nicholas Singleton, 13 carries, 87 yards. Their kid Tyler Warren, the tight end, is getting carries now. That kid's a really good football player. Drew Aller didn't even necessarily do anything really special. 17-26. I thought our secondary didn't have a horrible day for 171 yards. It's just really tough to stop the Tyler Warren kid, and we knew that coming in. I thought we did he caught 6 catches, 68 yards. He's had some bigger performances than that. It's just really the MJ Morris turnovers really hurt us in that type of game. You can't really have those. I thought for a second, the first part of the game, the early parts of the game, I was like, wait, is Maryland going to make this a fight? Is Maryland going to make this a close game? And then from there, it's like, whew, a wave of Penn State came, and it was like, oh, dang, that's a big time football team. But I don't expect much more from our team this year. I think we need a reset bad. We'll see what happens. But I just think the season ending on that note was not the best. I didn't expect us to put up a fight. I said it. I said I thought Penn State would cover because I don't know how we're going to do anything against them, and I don't know how we're going to stop them. But I just think the way the season went, Mike Locksley better look at himself in the mirror and say, you better fix this thing quick or you're going to be out as a Maryland coach. And all the stuff that you've built here isn't going to last, and it's all going to be gone, and recruits are going to flip. People are going to enter the portal, and you're going to see some of that this year, I bet. And so we'll see what happens. but I think everyone's just kind of done with it. The fans in our last home game a week ago, like there was nobody really there. It just hasn't looked good, and we're not a program that fans are going to show up no matter what. That's just not who we are. We have to win games for people to get in the seats, and we just haven't proven that we are able to do that. So there's just so many different things Maryland needs to fix and get better at. And I do think that Mike Locksley has a big offseason ahead of us, maybe his most important offseason ahead of us. We'll talk about that another day to really get this fixed, because the way Penn State outclassed us can't happen. You can lose games, but you can't just get demolished in every area. I know Penn State's better than us, but you don't want it to look like that, and you don't want that for your players, and people aren't going to want to play for that type of team. So it was a horrible loss, and I think that we have a lot to fix. One thing that we need to fix is addressing the offensive line in the portal. I'll talk about that next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook access you everything you need to place your live bets, all in the NFL, all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. There's so many different things you can bet on. There's NBA games tonight. There's plenty of different NBA players that you can bet on. There's also the college football playoff we have coming up soon. Also, conference championships this weekend, if you want to bet on that. There's so many different things. Of course, the NFL Sunday, we have that as well. And, of course, college basketball. If you want to bet on Maryland basketball, you can do that. So never waste a hunch. You make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I think the most obvious thing and the number one thing Maryland has to do this offseason is address the offensive line. It was horrible again against Penn State, and I think everyone knew that it wasn't going to be good against Penn State, but you still hope that they hold up to give MJ Morse a chance. But I said it in the pregame, I just don't think our offensive line can hold up against a talented Penn State defense overall, but defensive line in particular, and we couldn't. And it looked bad against Penn State, and it's been horrible. And like, think of the worst words you could use. That's what it's been this year. They had 6 sacks. Abdul Carter, who's really talented, had 2 sacks, who's going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft when he decides to come out. Really talented edge guy. And they just simply, crush our offensive line. And that's their biggest thing with Maryland football right now. I've been talking about it. To win in the Big Ten, to win to be able to compete with teams like Penn State, Ohio State, it's in the trenches. And I've been saying it. I've been harping on it. I've been trying to tell everybody that our offensive line just isn't good enough. It's just not. And that's usually the difference between a lot of the top programs and a lot of the low-level ones, or not in terms of like lower Big Ten teams and lower SEC teams and lower ACC teams. It comes down to the trenches. A lot of kids, a lot of teams, there's a lot of talented, skilled guys. There's a lot of talented receivers. There's a lot of talented running backs. There's a lot of those types of guys. But there's not a lot of talented offensive linemen that are really high-level guys that can really help you win football games. There's not a lot of them. And Mike Locksley has to figure out a way to get them for so many different reasons. One, you watched MJ Morse come in, and I think MJ Morse is a good player. I think he's talented. We didn't get to see it that much this season. I wish we saw it more. I wish he got more of a chance. But I'm almost, like I said in the first segment, I'm almost sure he's gone. I'm almost sure MJ Morse is gone after the season. I don't see how he sticks around with the new age in the portal. I don't see it. We'll see what happens. I think it makes sense for him to transfer with how Maryland's kind of treated him this year and how they played him and didn't really give him a chance. But with him throwing in there against Penn State, it just Do we expect him to look good? There's pressure every single play, and he's getting chased. He's getting sacked. He's getting hit. It's impossible to play the quarterback position like that. And our guys up front just aren't good this year. They're just bad. It's like worse than I thought it was before the season. I knew it potentially could be a problem. Every year for Maryland football, it seems like it could potentially be a problem, but I just don't remember the last time we had a good offensive line. Not even good, just solid, like a solid group that plays well enough in most games. We don't really have that. And this year, I knew it was going to be trouble because we lost our best player up front in DJ Glaze, who's now making plenty of plays for the Raiders. He's starting for them at right tackle. And I've been watching, and and they're talking about him as a future piece of that team, and he has a chance to be a really good player for them. There's plenty of Maryland football guys in the NFL that are making plays right now. Tarheeb Still as well looks like an absolute stud for the Chargers. So we underrated some of those losses to our football team last year, and clearly that's showing. But I think the hard thing is I want to say Loxley, go to the portal and get offensive linemen, but that's really tough to do because you think about the top ones. The top ones are all going to go to your Bamas, your Georgias, because they're going to throw a bag at them. And why would they go to Maryland? To be honest, why would they go to Maryland? If you're top offensive lineman in the portal, you're not going to go to Maryland. And there's a drop off. It's not like receiver. You can kind of find a diverse group of talented or a diverse group of talent in the portal. You can find guys that are really talented that are going to be NFL guys, but you can find a next tick down that have a chance to make a real impact, but maybe aren't quite. Offensive line feels like it's drops. It feels like there's really talented guys, and there's a next group that's they're medium type of guys. Maybe they'll end up being okay, but there's a high chance they end up being at a Big Ten type of level. And I think that's the type of guys that Maryland's been adding, and that's hard to do. And I can't expect Loxley to get some of those top guys. So I think we got to do a better job of developing the talent that we have, because every single year there's 4 transfers starting on our offensive line, and that can't be how it is, or we're going to get a disaster season just like we had. I think you've got to develop some of these guys, and we have some talented guys. We have talented guys in our 24 class. Therese Davis was playing a lot for us. Ryan Howerton got some time. And then we had Jalen Gilchrist, who's a top 100 player in the 2025 class. You got to make sure you keep him. He's going to be a foundation. You got to be able to develop those guys, keep those guys, and allow those guys to get to a play at a really high level and get to their potential, because you can't just get a bunch of guys from the portal. Maybe you'll be able to get one guy or 2 guys for depth or whatever, but you're not going to get a brand new offensive line that's really going to be good enough to compete in the Big Ten. I think Michael Loxley's learning that the hard way. I also think it's important with 4-star Malik Washington, who this is all centered around now going into next season, is Malik Washington, is getting him a talented offensive line is going to be paramount to Maryland's success for the next couple of years. And I think that's something that they absolutely have to do, because you don't want to waste his talent. You don't want to get him hit a bunch. You don't want to get hurt. There's so many different reasons why we need a really talented line. And I think for us to have success, that's going to be the number one thing that we have to address. Maryland basketball played a really good game last night against Alcorn State, but are they ready to play for the Big Ten play? Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute, like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I've been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute tickets and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Lowest tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So Maryland basketball, let's go to a more positive note. Really excited for this season again. I keep telling you guys this, but I'm a little bit concerned. I think we're ready for Big Ten play, but I am concerned with the schedule of people that we've played. We get into Big Ten play starting on Wednesday, and I'm excited. I'll be honest, I'm tired of these like Mickey Mouse, Alcorn State, Canisius. Like I'm tired of these games. They're just boring. Like to sum it up, they're just boring. And I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. They're boring. You get to the second half and you're like, the game's just so far from over. Like it's just not that like it's just not that engaging to watch. And so I'm super excited to watch Maryland play Ohio State on Wednesday, and then you get Purdue on Sunday. So an extremely important week for Maryland's basketball. But I thought Alcorn State, I thought we looked good. Just to sum it up real quick, I'm not going to talk about it too much. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it tomorrow. Julian Reese, I thought looked really good. I thought Derek Queen looked good. I thought Selton Miguel looked good. Rodney Rice looks good. I thought one of the bright spots has been Tafara Gapari, who transferred from Georgia Tech. He started to look really good. He's got the length. He can shoot it a little bit. He can defend. And I think he's the guy that works really well in rotation with Reese and Queen, because he's a guy where it's like we can kind of win Reese, we can kind of run more of the 4-round-1 that sometimes we look really good in that type of set when we go 4-round-1. So I do think that he's somebody that is looking good because he can shoot it a little bit, but he can also play inside. He had 8 rebounds as well, so he's definitely an exciting type of player for us to have off the bench. I think that's going to be something that actually matters a lot in Big Ten play is Gapari. It'll be interesting because Jordan Geronimo, of course, is going to come back eventually. I don't know when. He should be coming back somewhat soon here. And I wonder if he's still in the rotation. I would probably take him out and continue to play Gapari with Reese and Queen, rotating with Reese and Queen and getting some of those backup minutes, because I want Reese and Queen to play as much. Like Derek Queen and Julian Reese, they obviously are good together, but when they're out there alone, they're really good too. And I want them to get some of those opportunities. And I just think Jordan Geronimo brings more cloggish. And I don't think you have to play Geronimo necessarily, but I think our depth of scoring has really showed. We have a bunch of guys that can score the ball and do everything on the basketball court, which is something that's extremely important. I also think Jalen Young looks like a good backup. Had 7 points, shot a 3 assists. He's a really solid backup guard for us. Deshaun played a solid game, made a 3-point shot, which we've seen him struggle from the past. Also had 5 assists, 3 rebounds. So I do think that some positives came out of the Alcorn State game. Now the question is, are we ready for Big Ten play? And I do think we are. And I think we play a solid Ohio State team. They're not the best Big Ten team we'll play, but they're definitely a solid team. And I think it'll be a really important game to win, because you don't want to lose that game and then Purdue feels like a game that you really need to have. That's definitely a game I would think Maryland wants to win to keep the pressure a little bit off going into the Purdue game. Not the pressure off, I want to say, but you just don't want to start racking up a losing streak in college basketball in terms of your resume, in terms of getting into the March Madness and everything. Like, you just don't want to. And so I think Purdue's good, but I don't think Purdue is necessarily much better than us. I think it's absolutely a team that we can beat this year. But Ohio State they haven't necessarily played a ton of really good teams either this year. They did play Pitt and lost 91-90. They put up a good performance, solid performance against Pitt, and they played Texas A&M, 2 good teams. But it's not like they've played like a gauntlet, though it's similar to us playing Villanova and Marquette, and I think we're both in similar spots. And I think after the Ohio State game, I think we're going to be definitely ready to play all the teams that we need to. Ohio State does have some interesting games later when I just look at their schedule. Kentucky and Auburn later, which is interesting. But I do like how we have a Big Ten game early on. I'm bored of these other games. I'm sorry. I'm bored of playing Alcorn State and Bucknell. I just am. I'm ready to play someone top end with real talent like an Ohio State. And I'll be really interested to see how Maryland finishes up, how we look against Ohio State team that's much better than a lot of teams that we've played so far this year. And these are the wins that you start to look at are really important. You just want to start racking up as many wins as possible, and that'll be interesting against Ohio State on Wednesday. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.